This conference will now be recorded.
Conservation Commission is called to order. I'd like to establish a quorum. Item number 1, Frank Thorwald.
Hail Nations.
Stephen Cooper.
Bill, are you there? Commissioner Firebrand?
Might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Perfect, thank you.
Fantastic. We have a quorum. Is there any conflicts of any interest? Hearing none, let's move on to item 2, discussion and consideration of for the minutes of the March 19th meeting, public meeting. Does anybody have any changes or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the March 19th public meeting minutes? Second. Okay. That was Commissioner Cooper.
No, I believe Dale made the motion and I believe Bill seconded it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to item 3, Penta South operating. Marta, do you want to brief us on this?
Yes, I can do that for you, Frank. So Penta South sent a request mid-April, April 26th, to request shut-in status for 10 of their wells for 2 years. The request is for shut-in for 2 years from the date of the request, if possible. And then if you need any additional information, just let me know what you guys need.
And what's the status at this point?
The status of the 10 wells, they said that the reason for the request is due to the production of water, and they're developing a plan to deal with the water at the moment, and want to shut in the wells until they have an adequate plan.
And what do we need to do with this item?
I would need you to vote to allow me to issue shut-in status for 2 years from the date of request.
Commissioners, questions for our administrator.
Mr. Chair, this is Stephen Cooper. Just one question with regards to the issue of water. Would either the chair or our oil and gas administrator just briefly say what regulatory authority we have over the issue of water as it relates to oil and gas?
In terms of oil and gas, in terms of there's authority over regulating injection wells. If that's the route that they chose to go, we would issue drill permits. There are additional regulations and agencies in which they'd have to go through in order to get that process. In terms of trucking the water out and disposing of it elsewhere, that would be outside of our regulation, as far as I know.
And then the third option, of course, is putting it into some kind of field and with liner and letting it evaporate. But there's other regulations associated with that, and many of these require DEQ. Marta, anything else on that?
They provided evidence that several of the wells have shut-in pressure, therefore potential for production, as well as certain wells, can produce water at this time. So they did provide evidence that the wells are producing, which is why they requested shut-in status instead of temporary abandonment status. Other than that, I don't have anything specific. I believe they are present on the call if you had any other additional questions for them as well.
Yes, please address the commission. Whoever's representing Penta South.
Yeah, this is Wesley Marshall with Penta South.
Wesley.
Frank, I want to make a couple of comments, if you don't mind. The wells we have are varying in amount as far as water production, from as low as 4 barrels a day to as much as 45 barrels a day. And it looks like most of the wells would produce helium. I'm saying 8 or 9 of the 10 that we've drilled. And what we're going to do, what's on our list of things to do in the following weeks, is to go out and sample the water in each of the wells and send it to get analyzed to see to where we are on the water quality and the salt content and all the other stuff that might be in the water. And that's where we are right now.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Marshall?
Well, this is Dale. Mostly just a comment on this request. It seems to me like there's be no reason to not grant the extension, because we're waiting for more information about how the water would be disposed of. So we'd need an answer to that question, and a part of that would be a result of their testing.
I have a question. Thank you, Dale. Commissioner Nations. Have you looked at the injection wells with regard to injecting back into the same formation?
Yeah, that's what we would really like to do. We have 2 of the wells. One specifically does not produce a lot of water or helium, and we would like to turn around and inject the water back in the same zone, which is in the Shinnerup, that we're actually pulling out the helium from the other nine wells. That's what we would like to do. We're going down that road and trying to see what all all the stuff all the hoops you have to jump through and permits you have to get in order to be able to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, do I have any other discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve this, or?
I'll move to approve this request. My question is, do we have to relate to each and every one of the wells, or can we do it as a package deal?
Jay Scarton, can we do them all at once?
This is Jay. Yes, you can. I'm looking at R12-7-125B as to how they can obtain abandonment or shut in. If they demonstrate a future beneficial use and submit the sundry notice to the commission containing information as to casing integrity, et cetera. Marta, have they done that? I'm just curious.
Yes, they have.
Okay, so they've covered the information that they're required under that rule.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, you can do it as a group. You don't have to do each individual well.
Therefore, I move to approve the request for shut-in status for 2 years on these 2 Penta South wells. I'm sorry, 10 Penta South wells.
Do we have a second?
I will
Second.
Who is that? I'm sorry.
That was Stephen Cooper.
Okay. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Well, no opposed. The motion carries. You have your shut-in status. Moving on to item 4, AZOGCC resolutions by bylaws amendments for consideration. Has everybody looked at the bylaws? The resolutions that the IOGC sent us?
I have not.
What I'd like to see us do, as we move forward, we're going to be getting a number of these things in the future from IOGCC, and they're going to ask us if we want to approve them or modify them, and we'll need to vote on that to move that forward, because in some cases the governor is going to want to know our opinion on these things, and should have a formal vote on these things. So right now the IOGC on this particular thing has passed their resolution and are moving forward, and I'll talk more about that later on, but I think we could just skip this for the time being, and if everybody would look at those resolutions and give us some input so we could actually have a vote on it the next time.
This is Dale. Now, this is unusual. These resolutions have been passed, over the years, and it's the first time we've been requested to have a vote of the commission. Usually, it's the representative to the IOGCC from the state that would just make that that known. So this is unusual.
Yeah, they want to start getting these the commission's support or the governor's support on these many of these resolutions, and so they're asking the commissions, do they support them with respect to their representative? So. Is there any other questions or discussions with regard to item 4?
I'd like to know. I'd like more information about why now they want a vote from the commission for each of these resolutions. It's a departure from past history,
Yes.
past active actions.
We can talk about that offline, and I'll go over that with you.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Moving on to item 5, a report by the Oil and Gas Administrator. Administrator Hoden, would you please address this?
Absolutely, Frank. Thank you. Just some updates on recent well activity and other activities since our last meeting in March. An update on the plug and abandonment of the rare earth exploration wells, the 2-1 and the 28-1. An update on this is that, we've been continuing the process for identifying a subcontractor to do the work. We've been going through a state-approved vendor. It's ADEQ approved vendor list, and so there is an approved contractor which we've provided a list of subcontractor options, and that vendor is then contacting those subcontractors and getting quotes for the job in order to pursue that avenue to get the work done. We're hoping that process will be complete over the next month or two, and we'll get that work done. As for the Pollard Helium plug and abandonment, the 36-1, I was informed that the vendor that's plugging that well should be moving on to location within the next 3 weeks to get that completed. Then moving to the Prize Energy Resources APP status. So I believe we discussed last time that an appeal to the APP permit was submitted. That appeal was reviewed and was voted for an order of dismissal. And so I believe it was last week that they issued an order of dismissal due to a lack of standing of the appellant. Additionally, since the last meeting, there were 2 new drill permits approved. First would be the Myriad Resources Aztec 3-1. That well is currently drilling. I believe it's just completed drilling and they are cementing casing. They're doing some remedial work to ensure adequate cementation behind pipe. Additionally, Desert Mountain Energy was issued a new permit of the 11-1, and they did submit a sundry notice that they intend to spud that well shortly. But last I heard they were having some issues with their getting the rig in, and would be touching base once they had a more definitive date for spud. In terms of updates for the website redesign, I'm still working with DEQ staff to get that ball rolling again. It was handed off back in December, but since then there have been a lot of changes in terms of moving DEQ employees completely remote. And because of that, the person who is in charge of redesigning the website has actually been overseeing basically consolidating the office space, and so her time has been constrained. We're working on developing a new timeline for the project, and I should have that timeline established by the end of this month, finalized, so that things start moving forward again. Then lastly, I did conduct the sub-annual inspection at the Adamana LPG facility 2 weeks ago, and everything was in compliance. It was a great experience. I got to learn a lot about the process up there. They were very helpful, and everything looked up to par. And that's all for my updates.
Is there any questions for our administrator on any of the subjects she talked about? Marta, I have a question with regard to the web redesign. As I understand it, there's only one person in DEQ that is familiar with that design, what it's written in. And she is the one that was promoted. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So
yeah, the script in which our website is written in, there's only one employee within DEQ who knows that language, that coding language. And so that's why we're kind of constrained and have been delayed. She was promoted in an interim capacity, and that's they're working on filling that position, and once that is complete, she will be able to allocate time and resources back to working on this. It is still at the top of her priority list. It's just a matter of the timeline.
And you submitted all the redesigns and suggestions and everything for the website for her to do?
Yes. It was a preliminary outline that was submitted to her back in December, and her and I reviewed everything together, and hopefully we'll be back on track with moving forward with getting that rolled out soon.
Do you want to briefly brief the commission on what those redesigns entail?
So just some of the basics. I mean, her and I are starting pretty simple in reorganizing the layout of the website in order to make it more user-friendly. There's a lot of redundancy on links and where certain things are. And so we're just trying to reorganize the pages, the tabs on the website to make it more clear. Then additionally, we're going to kind of make the homepage a more regular update. So what's going on in the state of Arizona this month. So we're going to attempt monthly updates on that page and kind of give the public as well as operators and anyone else who's interested more regular updates posted there. So you're not having to dig into the sub tabs to figure out what's going on within Arizona. We want the new permits that are being issued, new publications, anything that's going on to be up front and center so that there's lots of transparency about what's going on. And then additionally, we're going to add some new links and resources outside of the commission for things like APP, just so that operators have a better and easier access to those resources when trying to go additional avenues, specifically need for an APP, an aquifer protection permit. We want to help make sure that those requirements are very clear and transparent for operators, as well as all the other process in terms of permitting wells, plugging wells, and completing wells.
Commissioners, is there any other questions or suggestions for Administrator Hogan with regard to the website design? Hearing none, then we'll move on to item 6, report by the chairman. Our web portal we haven't done anything with it since the COVID started, so I doubt we'll be getting anything done on that for another year. The rule updates, I've been working with MARTA and our AAG, Jay Scouton, to bring these forth to the governor's office this summer. We've already had discussions with I've had discussions with the governor's office for their natural resources person, and they've done a preliminary review of the types of changes we want to put forth, as we've already discussed in the past. So MARTA is going through those right now. Once that's done, we will submit them to Jay, to the AAG, to make sure there's no conflicts legally on that. And then we will submit those to everyone, all the commissioners, to take one more look at. And if there's no issues there, we will send a request to the governor's office to allow this to an expedited rulemaking, I believe was what we'll probably do at that point. Just on that, is there any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay. Moving on, procedures manual. Our administrator has been working on that as well, and automating that, and she's been doing a great deal of work to bring us into the 22nd century. So we're getting there, and she's going back through all the old records and pulling that together. In fact, with regard to that, and I'll be discussing it a little bit more later, we've been working on getting an intern from one of the universities to assist. DEQ is working on that and currently being prepared a list of criteria that we would use to determine what we would need from the universities. And I've talked to ASU, for example, about this, and I'll discuss that more as we move forward here. With regard to the AZOGCC, their last 3 meetings have been online, and I've attended all of those meetings and their subcommittee meetings, except for the financial one. And they have been, I've told them about what's going on here in Arizona, about the types of drilling, where we're drilling mostly with air here, a little mud, so we're not using very much water. They talked about carbon sequestration, and we also talked about storage of air, compressed air in the different salt formations. We talked about besides the carbon sequestration, measuring devices that can go down hole, geothermal, mineral rights, e.g. ESG funding, and there'll be some follow-up with regard to the technology and the devices. There's quite a few new devices out there that have been developed over the last 10 years by the Texas Bureau of Economic Geology. And some of these can measure, go down hole and work for 20 years, can be put into concrete for measuring the integrity of the concrete, and even for hydraulic fracturing to determine specifically where the fractures are, the length, and so forth. Quite interesting, and from we also any other questions on that one? Hearing none, let me move on to ONER. We were contacted by the ONER. For those that don't know what ONER is, it's the Office of Navajo Hopi Indian Relocation, and they buy up surface land, and then members of the tribal nation move into those particular areas. It's expanding the lands to where they once were, but that's part of the area that causes confusion, because they'll have surface rights and access, and we have to deal with the mineral rights below, and sometimes that's in reverse and so forth. But the ONER attorney contacted us and asked if we would be interested or would do the inspections at those sites on the surface on the ONER land, because ONER is not technically tribal land, Navajo Nation land, for instance, until ONER transfers it. So there's a lot of complexities there, and we've had a number of follow-ups, and we've talked to our AAG and to DEQ about this, which they would all have to be in that same thing. And we requested letters from ONER, from the Navajo Nation, and from the chapter to allow us to do that. Those letters have been sent off. Following discussions have incorporated that it would probably be better to have an intergovernmental agreement with all those parties. So that is, Jay is doing a draft of that, and that will go out to the various parties for discussion to see where we move, how we move forward, if we move forward on that. But even if we don't inspect, at least a formal way of communicating and working together would be beneficial to the people that live in those areas and the protection of the aquifers in those areas. And it's been more than 2 weeks. What was it, about a month ago, Marta, that they contacted us?
I think, yeah, probably over the last month.
Okay. So any questions about that from the commissioners?
I have a comment here. This is Dale.
Go ahead.
This goes back in the 1980s, I think it was, when we actually did geological investigations of these properties that they were considering purchasing. For example, I did mineral analysis for a given ranch. Another specialist did an evaluation of the groundwater resources of that particular property. Frank, you mentioned this would be an inspection. Would an inspection include evaluation of the natural resources such as I'm talking about?
That's a good point. It's been undetermined. We're still in the early stages. So I'm glad you mentioned that. We can put it on our list to talk to them about.
Yeah, we submitted reports. Each of the people that I was involved, that I worked with, the reports were submitted to Navajo and Hopi tribal governments. Whether or not they still have them, I don't know. I don't think I have copies of those reports anymore.
Administrator Hoden, would you put that on our list of discussion points with to talk to ONER about?
Will do.
Okay. Let me go back to AZOGCC. There was one other thing that was brought up. There was actually several things that were brought up that I neglected to mention. One is I just had one of those moments. Lithium and helium-3. Across the country, there's a lot of people going back looking for lithium-3, and they were talking about one particular situation that occurred, and this may be unique to that one state, but there'd been a lot of salt in the water, and they'd mined it for gas, oil, and then came back and pulled salts out and other things from the tailings in the groundwater. But they discovered lithium in there and new methods of pulling lithium out. And there was some legal action. And in essence, what it was, it said the grants for this particular geology, the mineral resources here, were based upon what was known at the time and what was valuable at the time. And the complainant said that lithium was not even considered anything, didn't even know about it at the time. So therefore, lithium could not be included. And the courts agreed to that. And this was done some years ago. So new rights had to be talked about with regard to the lithium and who held those rights below the surface. I don't know that we'll have any kinds of issues like that here in Arizona, but it's just something to keep in mind for the future. And they also talked about ESG funds and what that meant to the industry, more so with the oil and gas industry than the helium industry, which we have here. But that could affect the CO2 operations here. And I just wanted to bring that out. Is there any questions about that from the commission? Okay. Moving on to ADQ has been working with us hand in glove on a lot of these things. And our relationships have strengthened and our communications have strengthened so that we have I think, a very good rapport. And Administrator Hoden has been working closely with them so to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks, as well as with the land department and others. We have been on our budget. We've been talking to ASU and others and DEQ about bringing an intern on board, as I mentioned earlier, and to help MARTA get some of the things done that needs to be done. And it's possible we might end up being able to bring more than one on board. There's going on to legislation. We've had no legislation that has really federal anyway, that's caused us any issues, including the federal moratorium. And then with respect to state legislation, we've had some legislation that has gone through with regard to groundwater protection and injection, but that won't take effect till 91 days after the session ends. So we haven't had the time to discuss what impact that is or will have with regard to the commission. But we will let you know at a future meeting, or if it comes out in between, we will send you everybody something. Administrator Hoden, have I forgotten anything? It seems like I have.
I don't think so. Not that I can think of at the moment.
Commissioners, is there any questions about what I've been talking about?
Yeah. This is Dale. Yeah. Are these paid internships we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Let's see. Dale, do you have anything you need to report?
Nope. No, I don't. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you're talking to the AZOGCC. Technically, I'm still the representative from the state to that organization, and I'm happy to continue in that capacity, which means just communications. But I have had very little communication with them in the last couple of years. So you may want to consider replacing me as the official representative.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned that. There is one other item that I forgot to. The governor's office is, I know, is considering two people, at least two that I know of, two anyway. There may be more, as an additional commissioner on the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. And I've been told that they will let us know later in the year, and I understand they've been doing some interviews with respect to that. Both parties that are being interviewed are known to the commission, and we'll see what happens and what the governor's office decides. That's the only additional thing that I knew that was the thing what I had forgotten. Is there any other questions, discussion before we go to call to the public?
Frank, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I just wanted to,
Identify yourselves for everybody.
oh, sorry, this is Bill Feyerabend. Going back to the Navajo and Hopi lands. So we're going to get in a situation where these were federal lands that now have been turned over through some process, are now turned over, at least the surface rights are turned over to the Navajo or Hopi tribes. Is that correct?
No. In part it is. A lot of these lands are private lands that ranchers owned here in the state, not federal lands.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, my point, I just pulled up a report I wrote a couple of years ago on a lithium property over in Moab, Utah, which would be really similar to probably what you're looking at here. And on federal lands, lithium is covered by placer mining claims. So it's kind of a separate commodity that's treated as like gold or silver or iron rather than oil and gas. And I'll just bring that up so people are aware of it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other discussions? Any other questions?
Oh, yeah, Frank, in answer to Bill's question there, or comment, in the past, those were strictly private lands that were being considered for purchase. I don't think in any case did we consider transfer of federal land to the tribes.
I think that's correct, but I don't know that to be certain one or the way or the other. So
Yeah, I know that all that we were considering at those times were privately held ranch lands.
thank you, Commissioner Nations. Any other questions from the commission? Comments? Administrator Hogan, have we missed anything that we need to go back through?
I don't believe so.
Then let's go on to call to the public. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
Yeah,
Yes.
Frank, this is Joe Dixon. You're talking about the lithium issue there with the AZOGCC. We actually had a similar situation with zeolites here in Arizona years back too, where land has been transferred mostly between the state land department and the BLM. And there was done long enough ago that, at the time, I think people knew zeolites existed, but they had no real value or special use or need or anything like that. And when that finally got figured out and somebody wanted to mine it, there was a little bit of a battle there to figure out exactly who had the mineral rights or mining rights down there too. We're talking about the Bowie Chabazite deposit down there. Might be familiar with there, but it took a couple of years to get all that stuff straightened out here.
Thank you, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Joe, that was helpful. Somebody else had their hand up?
Yes, my name is Martha Pierce. I'm with Protect Arizona, Protect Our Water Arizona, and I'm also a concerned citizen in Navajo County. And I've been sitting in on your meetings for the past 3 years. And over the last year, we've had under discussion rare earth and pollard recapping and clearing out of their abandoned wells. And I have concerns because, for one, Pollard, their permit expired 3 years ago, and it's taken 3 years before we've even had the ability to get someone on there to do the job of cleanup. My other concern is that you have real inconsistencies when it comes to the bonds you hold these companies accountable for. For example, Rare Earth only gave you $10,000 to clean up, and I'm not sure whether or not that's going to cover the costs because we haven't heard any numbers or figures of what that's going to be. Also, Pollard, like I said, theirs expired 3 years ago. I believe Pollard put up a $25,000 bond. So the inconsistencies of the bonds really throw me off because I'm assuming that the cleanup is pretty extensive on all of these wells. Also, in terms of the new drilling permits given out, Myriad has been given a permit to go 4,500 feet, which puts them below the aquifer, through the aquifer if they use methods that we're all aware of, and you've only bonded them for $10,000. They're going for oil, gas, and helium, and the cleanup could be extensive, but they're only bonded for $10,000. And I'm really curious about, are the taxpayers picking up the excessive amounts that these cleanups are going to recover and capping is going to require? Also, in the last meeting I spoke about your agency, because conservation is in your name, and yet in the 3 years I've been attending your meetings, you aren't conserving anything, and especially not the concern over our water, which we all have in this severe drought that we're living in. Last time we were referred to by the chair as activists. Well, I have to say I wear that title proud, because my mother taught me at 5 years old I lived in a desert and water was precious. And I am proud to be a person that holds elected and appointed officials accountable. And also in the last 3 years, I have worked with Kirk Jalbrith from ASU and NOAA in their committees and their organizations they're trying to put together for communications between oil and gas, the representatives of our state, and the people. And they were actually, NOAA was actually kind of put down as having an agenda and against you. And her agenda is, in my opinion, has been nothing but communications and keeping the line of communication open between all of us. And I appreciate it.
I just wanted to let you know you have 1 more minute to speak.
Well, thank you for interrupting me. I was almost finished, but since you gave me another minute, I'll let you know. NOAA has been working hard, so as Kirk's whole group, I've attended workshops and meetings trying to increase and help communications between the people of this state who are very concerned and the commissions that have control over all of our resources. So I am thankful for NOAA, and I hope somebody on your commission is participating in her workshops. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Yes, I have comments. Wayne Pierce, Protect Our Water Arizona. I have hopes and dreams. One of my hopes is that one of these nights, one of you commission members will wake up and realize that environmentalists are not the enemy. I'm not against making profit. In fact, I've spent most of my life trying to make some for my family. But a pathological addiction to profit is bad for everyone. Profit über alles is quite simply a bad business model, and that is the model you seem to embrace. It's just not sustainable. And I'm going to say that word again, sustainable. Look that word up, because from everything I see with my eyes and hear with my ears, you do not seem to understand the true meaning of sustainable. It doesn't seem like any of you are aware of how precarious our water supply is and how profoundly important it is to protect that water. It seems like all you care about is power and profit and protecting the rights of certain for-profit corporations to gamble with our water in the name of, you guessed it, profit. I would love to see a list of the times that you have turned down a request from these corporations. To protect our water, we need no-nonsense regulations, which is a concept that seems to make your skin crawl. Regulations need to be forced on you because without them, you are no different than a bunch of unsupervised kids in a candy store. Is helium important? Of course it is. It's the same for oil, but not at the expense of our water, which is 1,000,000 times more important than these other resources. I am probably wrong, but it seems like none of you have children or grandchildren because it doesn't seem like you have any concerns at all about what kind of a world we are leaving to our future generations. If you hear a snarky tone to my voice, it's because I'm angry. We cannot drink helium. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. And I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. To be fair, it's we the people who give you the right to speak, because it's we the people who pay the salary of the person who gives you the right to speak. So I'll end with 2 words. You're welcome.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
Well, I guess I'd like to make a brief comment, Frank.
Please say your name and go ahead.
My name's Jim Ballard. I'm a member of the citizenship down here in the Phoenix area. And I just want to comment because I hear many things that are said about the commission that are not necessarily true, or people haven't done their background work thoroughly. For instance, the issue of the amount of money that is called for as a deposit to drill a well or wells in Arizona is totally determined by statute. The statutes are readily available for inspection. The 10,000 versus the 25,000 and all that is not up to the discretion of the commission. It's all regulated by statute. And I guess referring to the statutes, more reading of those would also bring to bear the idea that actually a great deal of the regulations and a great deal of the money that is required to be spent by operators to meet the regulations is to protect water. It's one of the main pillars of the Conservation Commission. So I'm not sure that that's understood widely. In fact, so few wells are drilled for deeper targets in Arizona that the lack of documented damage done by any of them. Of course, I'm sure any real damage would be of high interest to the commission. In comparison to the number of water wells that are drilled improperly taxed, the various aquifers, mechanically not secure. They're not actually directly regulated by the commission. The commission doesn't have anything to do with those, but the damage is actually far greater on that side as far as protecting the water resources, which is a pillar of the Conservation Commission's mandate. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 8, review and consideration of the future agenda items. Commissioners and our administrator, is there anything anyone would like specifically to have on the agenda and our future meetings? Hearing none, let's move on to item 9, announcements. Do we have any announcements? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 11, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
This is Commissioner Cooper. I move to adjourn the meeting.
Do we have a second?
I second.
And that was from who?
Bill.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 This meeting of the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is adjourned. Thank you all.